job and focus as much as possible on their strengths and get them to improve as individuals.
Very powerful. Thank you. And I was just listening to the speaker who was saying, you know, as a leader, you've got to decide how far are you going to get them when you keep pushing from behind, as opposed to supporting and leading them, actually holding and helping and guiding them. So very good point. Thank you.
Ken, can I add just real quick, Ken, that there's a book study series going on the What School Could Be platform right now, a book written by 3 educators about education and leadership. And I haven't been able to participate much, but a little bit earlier today, I was able to drop in for a few minutes. And one of the things that they were talking about was investing, the very process of that continual investment in the folks who are around you, rather than, you know, even trying to push or trying to pull. That if it's framed continually as micro investments almost on a daily basis, that you see these wonderful almost leaps forward by people who sort of suddenly realize that they're not being pushed or pulled, but that they're actually being invested in. It was really neat to hear them talk about that. So it's cool to hear you talk about that as well.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. Serena, you're looking good.
Looking good, Serena.
Yep.
And nice to see you at Hamley in person.
Yes, that was good. I was glad you had to be there in person. What's his name? Berkmeyer, I think, was the keynote speaker. He was a fun guy to be around. I went to his last session, so that was kind of cool and interesting. So some positive things that's going on at school, huh? Well, today would not be the day to ask that question. I don't know. It's spring. It's the week before spring break. It's middle school, and yeah, I think we have a couple of students who just, I don't know, they just kind of flew the cuckoo nest today, so to speak. But it's still good. I mean, that you still have the students that come by and you know, tell you how much they're going to miss being at school spring break. Want to know if they can come help out. So, you know, there's always those nuggets of I don't know, good things happening at the end of the day.
Yeah. You know, and those things that you do that encourage, you know, the students to come. I had one student that was in my office practically every day because he was doing irritating things to the teachers and the other children. And then during break time, he would come every day, rode his bike and came to the office and said, I'm here to help. Yay. So what you gonna do? You just hug them and bring them in and let them help you every day during that break time. But it really helped. So you're doing great stuff. Thank you, Serena. Josh?
Serena, I was going to text you earlier, then it kind of got away from me, but absolutely loved your blog. And Robert and I both commented on it today. It was very profound. I would call it profound. Yeah.
Thank you. I really enjoyed the conversation I had with Jan, you know, just kind of talking me through getting over the fears of blogging, of being like, you know, what do you say? And I don't know, I know that I was afraid at some point it could be maybe misconstrued or taken to be more of a negative sense, but it is what it is. So, yeah. You know, I feel like if people don't agree, they don't have to read it. It's my blog.
Yep.
But thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Serena. Jorge, how are things going with you?
Give us something good, Jorge, something positive.
Well, just let's see, one positive thing is tomorrow mass will be optional outside. So that's something that I think we're all looking forward to.
Oh, that's nice. Yeah, with all the things happening in the world, it's nice to recognize time in that way. Yeah. You know, I was at dinner at Lilia Bakery, and this adult girl came up and she said, "Hey, Miss Mahi, do you remember me?" And I did. I sort of remembered her face, and she says, "Well, what's my name?" Yeah, I was like, "What's my name?" So I said, "I know it starts with an R." And she goes, "Well, it's Becky. Remember, I'm Becky." And I said, "I know, and you're from Radford High School and the class of 1984. I said, "You know, it kind of comes back to you." And the thing that was really interesting is she said, you know, Miss Mahi, I got to take a picture because we still kind of still get together. And I want them to see that you still look the same as you did in 1984. That was the best part of the meeting. But she also said something interesting because she said, you know, we always talk about the teachers who made a difference in our lives. And that was the thing that just caught me, you know, because we don't know these things as educators, but these are adults now who are still getting together and talking about the teachers who made a difference. As she mentioned all of these names, and she goes, you know, you turned my life around when you told me you just gotta cut that crap out and start focusing on what's important to you. And I said, I'm thinking, did I say that? I probably did, you know, high school kids. Yeah. But she said it changed her life. And I thought, how interesting. So, you know, all of you are going to touch the future in so many different ways with the things that you do. Just even smiling at the children will make a difference. So I just wanted to kind of encourage you. Even on down days, it's still up days. Okay.
Yeah.
Denali.
And I was gonna come back to Jorge for just a second. You know, that it's really interesting because at Apple, and you know Shannon, right? So Shannon works part-time. I think to a person on staff at Apple, people are deciding that they're going to keep wearing the masks even when the mandate ends. And one of the reasons why people are talking about this is that no one has been, other than COVID, no one has had a cold or a flu or anything for 2 years. And you know, that whole store is a giant petri dish. You know, all these, in the past, you get kids who would sneeze on the iPads and, you know, then you have to go clean them and stuff like that. But nobody's been sick. So I think we're going to see a lot of people who will probably continue on because they've been thinking about that. And, you know, anyway, just wanted to share that.
Thank you. And we have Denali. Jorge, did you want to say something?
No, I'm okay.
Oh, okay, great. Thank you. Denali.
I have a funny story.
Okay.
So on, I don't know what day it was. Thursday, I don't know. I don't even know what planet I'm on some days. So it must have been Thursday. We went out to get lunch, me and my receptionist, and then we're driving out of our street. It's like this, like, it's not a busy street. It's, you know, it's a residential street. And then we're at the end of it. So it's a dead end. And we see this gelato truck. And he's like, stop the Nu'uanu, and we're coming out here, and we're like, and he looks lost, and we're like yelling at him. He can't hear us, but we're like, turn into our street, go to our school, stop off some gelato. Okay. And, you know, because we're just weird like that. And then we came back from getting lunch, and he's parked in our parking lot, and I'm like, oh, he heard us. He heard us. And then I was like, who's getting gelato? Why is the truck here? We had no answers. Okay, whatever. Then I don't know, I got busy, forgot about it. And then the next morning I got an email from my boss saying, happy Employee Appreciation Day. We have gelato for everyone. I was like, yes.
Oh, nice. Nice.
See?
That was
that moment that you decided you're going to yell at the gelato
yeah.
man.
I'm going to yell at every gelato man from now on. So.
You made his day. I'm sure you made his day.
I'm
and
sure.
You made everybody else's day too. That's fun. Thank you, Denali. We got to laugh or we'll be crying.
Right.
Okay. All right. So shall we get started then? Thank you everyone for sharing.
Yeah, Robert, and I want to be aware of Joel's time too. Yeah, because I think he's going to, yep.
Hold on.
I'll be real quick. Right. Yeah, Ken, I'll be real quick.
Famous last words.
Famous last words before Anne starts talking. Okay, Josh.
Yeah, so we're done with our welcomes and our housekeeping and our agenda well, we haven't done the agenda overviews yet. So Anne's going to take a couple seconds to talk about the blogs. We have Joel in the wings. He's already joined us today, and he's going to be doing some dashboard visualizations. And then Anne's going to be presenting some looks at a particular template that we could use for displaying your story or telling your story at the end. And then we've reserved time, hopefully by that time, Jess and Jillian and Barry will have arrived so that you have your private meeting. And we can probably push that a little bit so that we make sure we give Joel all the time that he needs to do what he needs to do. And then we have a very special thing for you at the end from Robert that we're calling the 5-minute university. So that's our agenda. So Anne, you're up about blogging.
Okay. And thank you, Robert, for putting these pictures in about blogging. And I just wanted to say that it seemed like, just getting the blogs started was very challenging. And can you put the big screen back on, Robert, so I can see everybody's face? Okay, so just to kind of say, if you think about the blog and how you got started with the blog and how you were kind of muddling through what blogs should be, can you connect the blog to something like your the things that we know? So we know that you have like a newsletter, right? Or something that goes out. What other kind of media things do you have that goes out to the public besides the newsletter? Serena?
Besides we have social media, Facebook and Instagram.
Okay.
So our PCNC has really kind of been keeping up with that much more better than some of us inside on the school campus can. So between the newsletter, the social media accounts, we do call outs using our phone directory and email blast. The teachers also, if we have something that really we want to make sure that students and parents see, we also have our teachers to post that in their advisory Google Classrooms. So yeah, and then of course we got a new digital marquee, so we can also put things on our digital marquee, which is also really helpful. So we were actually looking at our digital newsletter because it's easier to do it digital than print, right? So we were looking at how many clicks our digital newsletter receives, and we would like to see that increase. I think we have about 500 students roughly. We've only got about, 210 clicks on our digital newsletter. So, but it's something new that we've been doing this year. So like anything else, it's just going to take consistency and for people to get used to it. Right. We also created kind of like a flow page, kind of like, I don't know if you're familiar with Linktree. So we kind of created this flow page Linktree so that all of the different sites or places or resources, then it's just this easily compact page to go to.
Okay. So I just brought that up because I'm thinking, if you can think of your blogs as something that could be part of this social media or your newsletter, because Jan said something really key, which was, it is a way for you to share some of the very positive, insightful things that happen, not just this is what is, but you can actually be able to include in there some of the great things, Mrs. Takahashi is doing in her class, and here's what some students did to refurbish or to renew maybe our garden, and these are the things that they're learning about, and that could be all part of your blogging. Where do you take this blogging to? Okay, so it was just that blogs, we kind of struggled through it, and I would know because I kind of feel very self-conscious of putting my own opinions out there because I hate when people tell me, oh, that's wrong. I mean, go figure, or I didn't like what you said. Okay, but I think you guys have done such a good job of learning how to phrase the things in your blogs that become very insightful and very positive, that maybe think about the next steps, and maybe for your next kind of blogs, think about it in terms of how and what you would like to share within your school community in terms of what you're currently doing and learning, as a school leader. So just wanted to kind of bring that out there. Thank you, Serena. You just did a really good job of kind of taking us to that point. Okay, any comments, anybody? Was that kind of something to think about for next time? If you could put your blog into a newsletter, take a picture, or I'm old, I'll say take a picture, but put something in it as part of your final presentation. That with the blogging, it kind of got you to this point. And here's my last blog, which was more of a public blog in our social media in our school. Okay.
Awesome.
Great.
Thanks, Anne.
Thank you. Joel, you're up.
Joel, you're on deck, or you're up at the plate.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Joe.
Okay, you're on.
So what I wanted to do, let me move that here. So what I'm going to do today is just spend a few minutes sharing with you some examples of data visualizations, and you can stop me and ask questions at any point. But what I want to do is give you some ideas about how we can use data to tell a story. Can everybody see the slide okay, the green slide?
Yes.
Perfect. So this is, I'm going to just go through a couple of slides that Anne and I shared a couple of months ago when we were talking about telling your story through data. These are screenshots of the Non-Equally Waianae dashboard that we did for the complex area just over a year ago. And this dashboard tells a story. And a couple of things I wanted to highlight for you is when you're creating something like this, a story or a dashboard visualization, layout matters. We want to take them through a layout from a beginning to an end of a story. This is a 5-page report. Some of the examples I'll show you are shorter and some are longer. There are many ways to display data, bar charts, line graphs. Sometimes we just put data as a large KPI or key performance indicator. And there's also the option in your dashboards to use text to tell your story. What we chose to do with Non-Equally Waianae is actually put the text into speech bubbles where we had icons of students or adults explaining some of the story. And then we used graphics throughout. Graphics are a nice way to tell the story because graphics can help us summarize large amounts of information. Human brains are good at processing visual information, and rather than a narrative form of a report, a dashboard infographic can tell a story much quicker for people. So one other slide I wanted to share with you is this that we shared back a couple of months ago, which is about the idea of context. You do this pretty naturally when you're explaining to somebody about your school, about your school's performance. You often give some kind of context. Often context is between different student groups or between our past performance, but there's other context that you can provide for people. You can provide the context of where you are today compared to a target. You can provide the context of your data to the state results or to your complex area. And something that's a little harder to do and we don't do often is to similar schools. You might be the only school on the island that's just like your school with the size population of students and with the demographics that you have. There might not be a similar school in your town or on your island, but there might be one that's similar that you can compare to, or a number of them that you can compare to in other places. As educators, you often use rubrics to provide context to people, right? A rubric might explain that in order to score a score 5, this is what it should look like, or score 4 and so forth. And then finally, another way to provide context would be cut points. So there's various ways to provide context for people, and the use of context and graphics or infographics is a great way to tell a story. So what I wanted to do is just show you some examples of some infographics that I've created. These are infographics that I'm using with various clients that I have. But if you go online and you type in infographic or school infographic, you'll find lots of examples. So in California, school districts have to do an annual report. Tends to be around 100 to 200 pages. It's a compliance document, a big template that we have to fill out. Every school district has to fill out. And one of the things that I've done for some of my clients is turn that template, that 100-page state compliance report, into a shorter infographic report. This is set up to be a magazine that first describes the district, a little information about Richland School District, which is a small district in the Central Valley near Bakersfield, California, a little explanation about the strategic planning process. And then what we do is we take people through the data related to one of their goals. And then because of that data and the self-reflection data, these are the actions they're going to take for goal 1. This is where they're going to spend their money. So we started with a problem or an issue. Students aren't reading well enough. Students aren't achieving math high enough. Maybe students aren't graduating high enough. Therefore, this is the actions that we took. So this report is set up similarly. There's for each of the district's goals with data and then actions and money, data and then actions and money. What this report is based on is the baseline data over a 3-year strategic plan. So it doesn't have the final results yet. So there's one way that I help people present data through data visualizations. This is a different way to present data. These are posters. These are, rather than a magazine, these are designed to be posters that can be printed and placed on a wall in a school or in a district office. They started with their data. Then they showed some examples of feedback that they received from their stakeholders. And then therefore, these are the actions they're taking. So as an infographic, we laid out the data, the feedback, and that leads to these actions for their 3 goals. You'll notice on each of the examples, there's a use of fonts and colors and icons or graphics to help tell the story. This is very similar to the Nanakuli Waianae dashboard. It's an 8-page report. It's a little longer because they have more data related to various actions and work that they're doing. This is a California school district, but you'll notice used a similar format as Nanakuli Waianae of bar charts, text boxes or speech bubbles, and some icons to help tell the story. Many of you are familiar with WASC and the need to do a WASC report. I was asked by this charter school in Sacramento to prepare these posters, which they actually printed and used during their WASC visit to highlight some of their data. So these are printed as like 2.5 by 3 foot posters that they had in the room during the engagement sessions with the visiting committee and their families and their staff members. Again, you'll notice some similar themes, I think. Some of my dashboards that I'm showing you have more text than others. Some have more icons or graphics, use of graphics than others. And the idea for all of them, though, is to highlight the important data and tell a story. Another thing I should have called out a little earlier is one of the things that I like to do with dashboards and visualizations is to make the conclusion in the header of the page. So if you're making a slideshow report, I often encourage people, make the conclusion the title, and then the rest of the page is the evidence for that title. It's a nice way to help your readers or your viewers follow along and understand what you want them to know, rather than having them try to interpret all the data and make sense of it. You tell them right up at the top, in this case, that these students are attending college in high numbers. And then as you look down here, you can see, in fact, that the students at that school, MP3, are going to college at higher rates than the district, the county, or the state. And then one more report to show you. This is a 4-page report. It can be printed and shared out with families or community members, or it can be put online. This is called a school profile report. And the idea here is to highlight programs at the school, some of the outcomes for the school. We put some quotes in here to share some of the positive feedback from families. And then finally, a page that provides some really good context. I created a ranking system to compare their data to similar schools. So took the data outside the norm that the state provides and try to provide some more context to it by doing something unique with some rankings here compared to similar schools. And then created, these aren't badges or certificates from the state of California. This is just simply a way of highlighting that they're in the top 10 or top 20 for these particular measures that we created. So all of those are examples of ways of telling a story with data, where you would describe, the setting, your school or your students, the people that are involved. The plot of a story is where you're going to describe your actions, right? Here was the problem. Here's the actions. Here's the resolution. And I think what's really important is that you really are explicit about the theme. Whereas when we read a book, sometimes that theme is something that you have to interpret. I'm encouraging you to make that the theme or the moral of the story, your story, part of the headers in your dashboard, and be really explicit to tell people exactly what you want them to know about what your SIP resulted in, or the impact of your work. So just like a story, a data visualization can use data to tell your story, just like a written story. Wanted to show you a few examples of how you can weave together text, numbers, graphics, colors, and formatting to tell an interesting story for people. So let me pause for a minute and see if anybody has any questions.
Okay, so maybe we can clarify a little bit.
Sure.
Robert, if you could put everybody's faces back up. So what's going to be really important is that each of you, that was like a whole complex or a district, right? With all of their goals and everything. But if you think about your project, it might be something like a 2-pager, like a front and back, but it follows the same kind of template where you're going to be talking about, here's like the things that we said, our baseline, who we are, our problem, our baseline data, the things we decided to work on to address that. Some of the could be anecdotal things that you have, could be the different kinds of assessments that you're going to put up. And then you're going to be able to make some conclusions, like he's saying in the little text box where the two people are talking about the data, to kind of make a point about, what's happened with your project. And so just kind of scale it down to think about what they have, what Joel has done for each of the districts, or even like a smaller, districts are smaller. Yeah, it's not the state one, but you can actually start to see the different types of data, how it's reported. You can probably scale it down to be something that's related to your school and the project you're working on. So then now I'd like you to be able to ask Joel questions, because he can do a 2-pager for you, or 10-pager, whatever you want. But at least you kind of understand what that infographic dashboard is. You can take screenshots of it and you can put it in your presentation, but it's something that you can have as a keeper for the project you worked on, and as something that you can use later on when you start looking at your strategic plan as a principal, and how you'd be able to report out the kind of things that you're doing and the results you're getting. Okay, so why don't we open it up to questions for Joel? Jorge has a question. Oh,
Yeah, I messaged a question just for you, but I do have a question in terms of like, are there any like websites or programs you would suggest that we could, make our dashboard look interesting in terms of of an infographic, and hopefully it's free and easy to use?
And maybe I can add something, Joel, because we want to help you out on this, because we're more interested in your getting the content. And Joel, you can slap me if I'm wrong, but I'm thinking Joel will be able to put it together for you if you select the design that you want and you give him the information. Now, Joel, you may be able to help them on that.
Yeah, so what I did, and you might recall going back a couple of months, I actually created a template for you to use for each of you. And I shared this with you, and it's in your it's in the IHC folder, each of your folders. I created a 2-page layout that would be simple to use. This is for me, the simplest tool to use, Jorge, because it's just like using PowerPoint. So it's Google Slides, because Google Slides allows you to use graphics and images and text and move things around and resize things in simple ways. So it's not complicated, it's free. I put in here some icons, and I also mentioned that if you need any other icons, I can create them for you. And then as Anne's describing, if you wanted to start, if you're able to start putting some of the data to the page, I can help redesign some of it, or make some of it look better, or clean some of it up for you. Or if you wanted a certain type of graph that doesn't exist, that you can't think of how to make, I can help you with those things. But I already created for you each of you have one of these. It's a simple 2-page. I did it in as close as possible as I can get to your school colors. So they're each different. And then I used, as you can tell, I used the same general layout as Nanakuli Waianae. So one of the things that makes it really easy is there's a place for you to describe the issue or challenge that you started with. On this first page, we would put the baseline data. You can describe some of your actions. All of this can be changed or reformatted if you want. I just didn't want you to have to start from scratch. And then on the second page here, or the back page, we would put the accomplishments and the results that you had. You could use photos. We could use quotes from people. We can put in bar charts or line graphs to describe the project. And then finally, this summary section, again, is another place for text for you to be able to describe the overall impact or results of the project. So I think to answer your question, Jorge, here's for each of you a tool that you can use if you want to do something fancier. I work in Adobe Illustrator and Adobe InDesign, and I don't think most of you are going to want to learn a whole new software program, but I can develop things for you there and bring them over here. And what I like about Google Slides, as well as being easy to use, we can collaborate and online and work on that document together. So you can work on it from Hawaii, and I'm in Sacramento, and I can help you work on your design on this document. So this document has a template or behind that stores all of the colors and shapes here, which we can change if you needed to. We can change the colors. We can change the icons. We can change anything you want to make it fit for your needs. And you can see here are the colors that I created for each of your reports. So wanted to make it easy for you. I thought Google Slides would be the easiest place for you to create a dashboard.
Thank you.
And again, Jorge, where that's located is in the course, on the left-hand menu under topics. And under topics, you actually have a particular post there, which has the link to that.
Yeah, and I think you know, as Joel kind of mentioned, he can work with you. So if you have like an hour, I think for each of you can set up some time with Joel and actually get started and help and work with him on trying to set up your initial design. And he's on call, right, Joel, in case they need additional help, like you suggested, kind of like working on it like a Google Doc, so that they can email you, if you could check this for me, or can you fix this for me? That would really be helpful.
Yeah, exactly, thank you, Anne. What we don't want is for the idea of creating an infographic to be the intimidating or limiting for you. We want you to be able to tell your whole story from this whole project in a simple 2-page report. If you want to do more, you can, right, Anne? But they don't have to. And I'm here to make it easy for you by helping you with any of the infographics, any of the layout, any of the graphs and charts that you might need. I want to do all of that to help you tell your story. So it's as easy as possible for you to tell your story.
Hey, Joel, can I ask you a process? Well, I have 2 questions here, and I think we're doing well on time, right, Anne? So I have 2 questions. One is, so I'm just going to share something about the way I work, and maybe it might be helpful to everyone who's listening here. So let's say, for example, that I was going to put together a data dashboard that showed what I had worked to accomplish over the last 6 years with What School Could Be, and Most Likely, and all of that kind of stuff. My process, I know myself well enough at this point to know that I'm the kind of person that likes to put the framework in place and then fill. I'm not the kind of person, I get really stressed when I have to kind of build the framework as I go. I guess in very personal terms, I have to have the house tidy here where I live before I can sit down and do work. I mean, I know that's like very personal, but it tells you a lot about how I need a structure around myself before I actually get into the details. But I can imagine there are people who do it completely the other way. They sit down and start putting everything together page by page, and they can already see it in their brain. So I wonder what your thoughts are about the process of putting that together and how it can actually help you to maybe understand the thing that you're trying to tell the story about better, depending on the process you choose.
I think I understand what you're describing. We're each going to approach a project like this differently, right? The final report differently. Some people just sit down and start writing a report. Other people maybe get bits and pieces out, and then they have to kind of paste it all or glue it all together, copy and paste things, move it together. I think to keep this as simple as possible for each of you, and so this isn't a hard process. if you follow that template, I keep taking it off screen, but I'll put it back up there. If you follow this template, you can actually do some of this work right now before you have your final data. You can actually go in right now and in a paragraph, describe the challenge or the issue or the problem that you were solving.
Yeah.
Right? You can already do that. You can already describe right here in some text, we can put in the actions that you took, right? I started this intervention program, this after school program. We did these trainings. So we can do that in some narrative. And then when we get closer to the end, when you have some of the results or accomplishments, we can add in that data here and tell that story. One other thing I think that to respond to your good point, Josh, is I often just throw things on the page and then make it look good later. So you don't have to make it look good until we're in the 11th hour. We can, you can put a text box over here and have text over here, and you're not really sure where it's going to fit. We can have a graph, a pie chart, and you're like, here's a pie chart. I'm not really sure. So we can, because this is a very flexible design with Google Slides, you can throw things on here. You can even add more slides that are just going to be, ideas and thoughts. And then we can kind of move it all together to help tell that story at the end. So I would say, work on it over time. Don't try to do it all at once. And I would also say that it's okay to just throw things on this page and we can move them around and get them to fit together closer to the end. We can massage it at the end.
Got it. So then, Joel, my second question, I'm Denali, forgive me, I'm going to use you as an example in my second question. So I'm thinking, Joel, that you have considerable experience in what happens when the audience, if you will, receives the product. So we're jumping to the end game. So let's say Denali is telling the story of this 20% time project that she and her teacher Trevor are building, and it's like super cool, and we're seeing it in her blog how it's unfolding. And you cut to the very end when the thing is done. Like, I wonder if you can describe any instances where you watched as people received the data in the dashboard and it was meaningful. It actually had an impact in a particular moment.
For me, the creating of this product, this report is just half of the work, right? Because what you're talking about is using it as a communication tool. So whether you print this and hand it to somebody or share it with somebody digitally, if you think ahead, you're describing some really nice opportunities where you can help tell that story with the people. So for all the people at your school who were involved in the project with your SIP, for them to be able to see it completed in a 2-page report for you to maybe present it back to them is a really exciting opportunity for people. One, it lets them see that all the work that's been happening all year has been respected, I think, deeply through your efforts. Two, it lets them see their impact on the school. And three, one of the things that we don't do well as educators is we don't celebrate successes. We don't celebrate the things that we've accomplished. We often just see some data and then move on to the next school year and move on to the next body of work. So I think to pause and celebrate, and when I say celebrate, you might have some data that shows that something didn't work the way you expected. That's okay. I think it's still a celebration of all the efforts that went into your SIP this year for you and your teachers and your staff that were involved. So I think to do it in a way, and it could be a presentation to a group of people, or it could be just shared out by email, or it could be printed and shared with people. But I think it's a really nice way for you to kind of put a exclamation point on the end of the project by doing some form of a presentation to them. And then, thinking even further ahead, each of you, when you're going to be sitting in an interview to become a principal or to become a complex area superintendent someday or some other role, and these kind of artifacts to demonstrate, right? This demonstrates your effectiveness as a leader. I think is a really great opportunity for you to take this and keep it in your portfolio and use it in your future.
That's awesome, Joel. Thank you for taking that question. And Denali, you see why I asked it that way, right? I just have this picture in my mind at your mission school of you having an audience, and then here's the delivery of the thing, and then everybody gets to find out the thing that you were working on, and there's a lot of energy generated in that moment. So yeah.
And kind of, I think part of the learning is to do it. You know, we've put you all through different kinds of challenges, but I think the challenges themselves actually push you to a higher level as a school leader. And so this is another thing that Joel is mentioning. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it's to understand the process of your being able to look at your project and understand why you're doing it, identifying the kind of evidence that you want to share with people that shows that these are the positive things happening. Here are the things that maybe didn't go so well, but we're going to address it. And to give some conclusion about how this helped to make things better for student learning, to help with teachers feeling energized and renewed by using this process. I mean, looking at 21st century skills being developed through this, 20% time Genius Hour. I think it's just, that's what this is all about. So having you go through this process is something that I think is the valuable part, because we know that at the end, we will never let you fall, okay? So whatever you challenge yourself with, we're always going to be right there to help you finish it up, okay? Questions for Joel?
You might not have the questions today. All you have to do is drop me an email and ask me the question, or send me an email and say, can we meet for 15 minutes or 30 minutes or an hour? I will make myself available. I'm available 7 days a week. I'm available at pretty broad hours during the day as well, and I'm pretty flexible. So whenever you need some help, or you can just simply start working on this and send me an email that says, can you just review it and clean this up for me? Can you create some icons for me that look like this? Whatever you need, I'll be here to help you make this a success, make your dashboard a success.
Yeah,
That's awesome,
and I
Joel.
can, yeah, and I can tell you, he had to work with me. And so, you see, he laughs, but we went through so many iterations to try to come up with something that was really going to share, our journey and share the kinds of things that we're celebrating. So please see this as a learning moment and an opportunity to be able to do this for not only this project, for other things that are happening at your school. Okay.
Okay. I'm going to wrap up. One other thing I wanted to share, going now bigger picture for the IHC program. As you remember, a few months ago, you took a survey about yourself as a leader. We gave that same survey instrument or similar one to your principals because we want to measure the impact of the IHC program. What are you learning? How are you developing your knowledge and skills as a leader? So I'm going to be sending out this survey to you. It looks very similar to the survey you did before. Questions about your strengths, questions about your knowledge as leaders. There's 30 questions here. They're all on a 1 to 10 scale. It shouldn't take you too long. It should probably take you about 10 to 15 minutes. I'm going to send this out to you in the next day or two, as well as to your principal to get some feedback, so we can measure the impact of the program looking at the baseline data, intermediary data right now, or midterm data, and then we'll do another survey where we ask these questions and a few others at the end of the project, so we can get feedback for IHC.
And Ann and Robert, I think, and Joel, we wanted that to be done by next Monday, I think we decided. A week,
Yeah,
or was it?
I think we said a week,
actually
is what we said.
About a week, yeah. So by next Monday. And again, it's going out to the principals as well. And Joel, before you go, and you are, Joel, you're dropping that link into the chat. But we'll,
yeah,
oh,
link
I'm
to the
sorry,
survey.
you're going to email that to everybody.
I was going to email it,
yeah.
but I can drop it into the chat too.
Okay, in case anybody wants to grab it now. And I see that Serena raised her hand. So before you go, Joel.
Sure.
And I think you may have already given us this once before, but you shared a copy of some of the examples that you showed us just now. I think you shared those in a link or in one of our PowerPoint slides. Is that correct?
Yeah.
We are recording today, Serena, so this will be up later today. But you might want an actual link so that you can go in a little bit deeper.
Yeah. And
You mean links to the examples that I shared a few minutes ago?
Yeah, I think you've done it in the past, I believe, but I just wanted to make sure that I wasn't,
I'll put it in the email that I send with the survey.
okay, that'd be great. Just something we can
Perfect.
kind of look at a little bit more.
You got it.
Okay,
Got it. Okay.
thanks,
All right,
Joel.
everybody. Have a great afternoon.
Appreciate you.
Bye.
And then Anne, you were going to, hi Barry, nice to have you with us. Anne, you were going to, let's see, Robert, I think you're sharing this screen as well.
Right. So, so the dashboard is one of the things that we're asking you to work on, which is that 2-pager telling the story. And then the last thing is your presentation, which would be the presentation on in June when we do our celebration. And you can use this. This template is really like the bottom line. Okay, so it's the minimum. So, you know, we know that a lot of you are very creative and you'll be able to create your presentation in a much more sophisticated way. But what we wanted to do is at least to share what we'd like to see included in the final presentation in June. So very basic, your project title, and you're just going to put your demographics related to the SIP and kind of your baseline data. Yeah, so it's a presentation, so you don't have to, you know, it doesn't have to be a bunch of words, but I'm going to show you an example of what not to do later on. So your project title, next, and then the purpose of your project. So very simply stated, what's the problem? Why is it important for you to address in this project? Next. And then very simply, what's the strategy that you decided to use to address the issue? So explain what the strategy is, and then share the process of how you have a team, what you were able to design in terms of, and share your resources and other kinds of things that you used within that strategy to address the problem. Next. And then how are you monitoring the process? Share how the implementation process is working and monitored by you and your team. And then when there were barriers that came up, you know, how did your team reflect on this? How did you reflect on what the next steps would be? And then list down what kind of assessments you used to really monitor the implementation and the impact on the students. So if you had professional development being done, how did you assess that the teachers felt that this was really good and useful for them? And then how did you check to see the impact on students, whether it was performance, whether it was a survey, you know, just kind of identify, this is what we use to actually get evidence on how we were doing. Okay, next. Next one. And then finally, your outcome and results. So just kind of being able to share some of these things about what things did you learn? What kind of skills did you start to develop in order to lead the project? How were you able to build teamwork and collaboration? And then, you know, how did you create these opportunities to include a diversity of people and ideas? And then a conclusion related to your initial project design and what are your next steps. So these are just guiding questions for you. I mean, you don't have to go down the line and answer every one, but they're guiding questions to help you think about what you'd like to put in relative to the outcome of your project. And next, so after you talk about the outcome, we just would like you to reflect about leadership. So just kind of sharing your thoughts about what you learned during the process of the SIP. Okay. So basically that's kind of the simple template to help guide you and just putting a simple, tell the story of what you are working on. Okay. So, you know, I had to do this presentation at the WASC commission meeting in January. So I had to put down something, and it was a story about our trauma-informed journey in Nanakuli Waianae. So I just wanted to share it as an example. And there's a lot of words in it. We don't have to expect a lot of words. You can put videos in it. I do have some screenshots of data. So I'll just kind of go through these. And again, you know, it's not something that I'm saying you should do, but this is just something that hits most of the components So your title page or your introductory page, next. So this was the why and the how. So it's kind of just documenting why we decided to address this issue of trauma and how we were going to do it. Okay, next. We're talking about what things people needed to know. And right now the buzzword is really diversity, equity, and inclusion. And how do we start to look at these things in relative to the journey in becoming trauma informed? Next. So this is what we had to identify, the DEI in education, and it really was fostering the education of disadvantaged young people and looking at a whole system that was going to change our school community and change the culture of education in Nanakuli Waianae. Okay, next. And then I kind of talked about, this is our strategic plan. This is the rationale for why we're doing it. This is what we were going to do. And then we needed to, in red, this is how we were going to do it. Okay, so the strategy, the rationale is listed. And I did it for 4 of the different things that we were really looking at in terms of our data: low promotion rate, graduation and college enrollment. And then I listed down what some of the expected outcomes are going to be for the journey. Okay. So then we listed down and you could just do something as simple as this. Like this was the academic and socio-emotional strategic plan goals. So what are your goals for your project? Next. So this was the whole idea about changing beliefs and mindsets, because we're looking at an entire community of people, and part of it was sharing data. How do you shift the culture of the school, and how do we start to reduce, exclusionary practices? So rather than keeping them away from us, how do we become more inclusive in what we do? Okay. And then you can put in, like charts like this that kind of are more visual about what you're working on. Next. We also put in pictures as evidence of the teachers actually working on the tiered fidelity inventory assessment at the school as a leadership team. Next. And then we talked about, in text, what some things we offered from the district level in terms of training. Next. Okay, partnerships. So we're trying to identify who we're working with, who our teams were. Next. And then we put in some data. So these are some of the charts we got from our infographic dashboard, but it actually helps everyone see that based on the strategic actions we took, our suspension rates have gone down, and there was a 40% decrease in out of school suspension. So you just want to be able to say, what is the evidence? What's the result of what we were looking at as we stated our original goals were to try to help the students and help the community by identifying trauma, and these are the results of what we were doing. Okay, so that's part of the data. We also put in this kind of data, which was part of the HARBS data. So these are, like you can get panorama data, you can get HARBS data. Actually, you could see that the students are saying that from 2016, our baseline was 60% saying that bullying and harassment is a problem at the school. But by 2018, there was a decrease of 23% from 2016 and 11.59% from 2017. So only 36.25% of the students are saying bullying and harassment is a problem at our school. So you can kind of see, this is like just some of the evidence that says things are not only through data and suspension, but also the perception data from students. Okay, next. And then we also put in some data shifts. We identified, how Joel was saying, we put it in green when we said that it was improving. So, when we're starting to look at those things that we identified as some of our goals, like chronic absenteeism, graduation rate, college enrollment, we actually then showed in green, very simply, that these are the areas that we made an improvement. And we kind of even talked about on our infographic dashboard, we had greens like stars, we were better than last year. And then pluses where we were better than the state. So, you know, just kind of to show that there's recognition for how we're doing in terms of our goals. Next. So you can use this kind of way to identify. And then we also put in stories, you know, so your stories, your anecdotal stories, like we said, changing our mo'olelo, changing our story. And you can see that these are from some teachers and administrators, just them identifying how change has happened because of our change in relationships and restorative practices and looking at the whole child. Okay, next. So you can put stories in as part of your presentation. We also had data about how our vacancies went from 117 vacancies in 1 year in 2011, and we have like 59 in 2019. And a lot of it is because of positive relationships. So teachers are not taking, they're not leaving us as quickly as they were before. Okay, so again, you can use different kinds of story and data, and then here are just next steps. So you could put in what are our next steps in terms of our project, things that we found out. Okay, next. And then just to kind of say that these are some of the things that we're doing moving forward. So how will your school, how will your project continue because of the things you learned? What's your reflection? This is where your reflection could come in. Okay, next. And then we just kind of end with a little concluding thing, like lead with aloha. And it was love, unity, family, pride, and leadership for the sake of our children and their future. So in the end, you want to try to pull it all together for your project, whatever it is you want to be able to say, you know, to thank people that work with you, to recognize the positives, whatever it is. It's kind of nice to kind of end it with something like that. Okay. All right, so that's just like an example, baseline, some of the things that you can think about. I know you guys are going to do a super job. You know, again, it's just practice. This is just practice for you to be able to start to think about how you're going to tell this story, because they used to always tell me, you better have prepared a 30-second elevator speech when you're in the elevator with the governor and you want to tell them what you need. You know, and I have to say, now that I'm at the ledge, seriously, I do many 30-second speeches about where the money needs to go and the kinds of things that we need to do and why. And so this is just your way of being able to practice telling the story. And then I really appreciated that, you know, when Joel said, this is something that goes in your portfolio. This is something you accomplished. This is something you can talk about. This is something that shows that you know how to do strategic implementation. You can identify problems, and then you can work through something with a team, you know, with a team that really believes in your vision about why this needs to happen. And that's going to be so powerful during your presentation or interview for your next level job. Okay. All right. So I know there's no questions. And if they are, you can always call me because we're short on time. So I hope that helps, okay, as you move forward. But feel free to contact me if you have any other questions, okay? Josh? You're on mute.
Sorry, we're at 5:08. So I was thinking just 2 minutes for a quick restroom break, and then we'll come back. So we'll see you in 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Oh. So Denali, how long has it been since you've been administrator now?
It's 5 years.
5 years, wow. That's since you left
This is my
Noilani.
5th year.
Wow,
Yeah. It went by fast.
it did.
Yeah.
I mean, that was a long time ago, I think, because I was CAS out there in 2000, what's it? 2010, 11. You had already left by then,
No.
yeah? You were
No,
still
no, no.
there.
So 17. So my last year there was 16, 17.
Because I remember meeting you when I used to go visit Noilani. And of course, I know your husband.
Yes, you do.
How's he doing?
He's doing
loves-
well.
We did some really awesome stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
his kids used to come into my office to do the book study kind of thing. And they would get extra points if they were able to come to me as opposed to another teacher. So it was kind of, I thought they all wanted to come see me, but they did. They were getting extra points from Kaeo. How's that?
That's funny.
They're probably scared to see you.
And you know who it was? A lot of the football players and basketball players would come in because they needed the extra points. So they would kind of brave coming in to see me and giving me the report, knowing that I was going to ask a ton of questions, right? They said, oh, they told their friends that they better think twice because you're going to have to answer a lot of questions.
Yeah.
But it was a great project. It really was. It really was. Powerful. That was powerful teaching, you know? And when we were all in the auditorium and he had them lined up facing each other, and he said, you have to just look at each other and not say a word, but communicate your feelings to the other person. Those big boys just started to cry, you know, just by looking at somebody in the eye and trying to convey how much they appreciate that person was not an easy thing for them to do, but they read that book. What was the title? Becoming a Man by, was it Tony Wagner? Tony Dungy, I think it was.
Not Tony Wagner.
Not Tony Wagner, Tony Dungy. Anyway,
he was a football coach.
Pittsburgh
Yeah.
Steelers coach.
Yes, yes. But it was powerful that, you know, just that experience for them to not be afraid to express their feelings and still be able to be proud of who they are and where they come from. I mean, it was awesome. You know, we had some parents that were sitting in the auditorium and they were in tears watching their child do that. So I commend Kaeo all the time. I mean, you tell him too, I haven't forgotten that experience. Okay.
I will.
Robert, can you share the deck again, just so we get reoriented here? Okay. So we're going to, I think we have to adjust our time a little bit, Anne and Robert, maybe a little bit shorter, just so there's time to do our special ending today, which we definitely want to do. And you wanted to just share a couple thoughts before they go in about the time and soliciting some feedback about the viability, if you will, or the usefulness of the private group.
You know, we've heard that all of you really appreciate the time that you're able to spend with each other, just to kind of share, talk story, become a network of support for each other. So we'd like you to continue with that talk story today about the things that you're needing to work on, like your ideas about the blogging, your ideas about creating that infographic dashboard, and also, you know, like how you want to put your story together in a presentation for June, and other kinds of stresses you might be having, because we don't know what you guys are talking about. We just know that you appreciate the time. So after you come out of this one, can you also maybe talk a little bit about the value of this time for you folks, and maybe 3 or 4 kinds of statements about why this is really important and that we should continue this as we move forward with another cohort.
Okay.
That, can you
Yep.
think you can do that? Okay.
Okay,
Thank
that's
you.
awesome. And so let's, we're looking at the clock, it's 5:16. So how about we come back at 5:40? So we have some time for debrief, and then we have time for our special ending today. Does that sound good, Robert? And thumbs up? Yep, okay.
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna open the room, and you all have been assigned to that room. We'll see you soon.
We're still good on time, right?
Yeah, let me pause the recording here.